start talking about Kirsten and Shaq, and I'm calling them a Mr. and Mrs. Picky. I talked about this early in the season that these two were made for each other. I said that they were two peas in a pod, they were twins. And as we're seeing more and more as these episodes go on, they are absolutely twins. These two have so many things in common. They're really the same people. And now here we are, it being shown right here that they are Mr. and Mrs. Picky. Like before, nothing that Shaq did was good enough for Mrs. Kirsten. And now we're finding out nothing that Kirsten does is good enough for Mr. Shaq. Mr. and Mrs. Picky, they really are made for each other because nobody else wants to put up with this. Nobody else wants to put up with nothing that they do is good enough for them, and they always want you to do more. I've mentioned so many times, I got tired of listening to myself, that Kirsten's pickiness in the very beginning, because she went first, her pickiness was because she wants the person to do more. The pickiness is never to push you away. The pickiness is to draw you closer and to ask you to do more and more and more and more because they're never satisfied. Well, Shaq's no different. I did that little parody video that I told you guys about that many of you watched where I said Shaq got exactly what he asked for. And even Dr. Pepper said that Shaq can be picky. Well, there you go. That's why I didn't have too much sympathy, empathy for Shaq, because he got what he asked for. And the truth of the matter is, he is just as picky. Just as picky. He's just as hard to please as Kirsten is hard to please. Now we find out that these two have been knocking boots for a long time. Now let me tell you something. On the after party, Shaq is on the after party, and he clears up that not only have they been intimate and consummated their marriage as he announced to the world, they did it a long time ago. Long time ago. So now you got to play back in your head and you got to ask yourself, what's the big secret? Why do you have to keep it a secret? You know why Kirsten, I'm sure it was Kirsten who wanted to keep it a secret. You know why Kirsten wanted to keep it a secret? Because like I told everyone before, Kirsten likes to drive up her price. Kirsten likes to Kirsten likes to have an outside package that you view her as, but on the inside is something completely different going on. Kirsten didn't want you all to know that she and Shaq were doing the wild thing. They married, so what's the big deal? What Kirsten wanted you to keep believing was that she don't really like Shaq and his bald head is unattractive. And I don't know. I kept telling people long before it had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with his bald head. I even said that Kirsten does like Shaq. I knew that Kirsten liked Shaq because Kirsten kept trying to make Shaq work harder and harder for her. That's what it was all about. The put downs, the telling you what I don't like about you is just to extract more from you. And now we got this episode, we got Shaq doing the same thing with Kirsten now. And nothing she says or nothing she does is good enough for him. So he sits back and he becomes picky so she can work harder and harder for him too. I'm telling you, these two are made for each other. I really don't know who else would put up with them besides the two of them. They're actually good for each other because what they actually do is they actually hold each other accountable. They hold each other accountable. They don't let each other get away with anything. I mentioned very early on in the season that it was very clear that Kirsten's love language is acts of service. That's her love language. Even last week when she was getting into the whole masculinity thing, if you really listen to what she was talking about, what she was saying was she was judging him on what he does. Those are acts of service. She didn't feel like he did enough. He didn't take enough leadership. He didn't carry her groceries. He didn't open doors. Sometimes people say that's chivalry. Sometimes that says people, he isn't thoughtful enough. He isn't considerate enough. But when you look at all of her complaints about Shaq, it really is about doing, acts of service. And what did Shaq get on Kristen about this week? Acts of service. You didn't go with me here. You didn't go with me there. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. And it isn't, the point isn't that they both don't have points, that they both don't have valid points. But the problem is it is relentless. It is relentless and nothing is ever good enough. In and of itself, some of the things that they asked for, besides the $2.9 million house, some of the things that they asked for aren't necessarily so crazy and ridiculous. The problem isn't the things that they ask for. The problem isn't that. The problem is that they're constantly asking, constantly needing more, and nothing you do is good enough. I applaud Devon Franklin. Devon Franklin, this episode was very, very good with a lot of the couples. They should have put him on long time ago. But what Devon Franklin keyed on this week was Shaq. Kirsten did it too early in episodes, but what he keyed on with Shaq is it diminishes what people are already doing for you when you're picky. That's what he got to. He says when you are a picky person, you discount what they've already done and you tell them that's not good enough. I want more from you. And that's what Shaq did this week to Kirsten. Everything she did, he nitpicked it. He didn't give her credit for the parts that she did, and he said it wasn't good enough. It's the same thing that Kirsten did to Shaq early in the season. It wasn't good enough. But behind closed doors, she really does like him. She really is trying to draw him near. She's doing all the things to get a yes out of him on decision day. And she's not telling you that they knock boots. Why? Because she's got an image to uphold. She wants to appear virtuous. She doesn't want anyone to know. What's wrong? You're married to the man. What difference does it make? And I don't want to hear anything about this as a Haley and a Jacob repeat from seasons before that the D wasn't good. No, it was good. She liked it because they've done it more than once, and I know they have, and she's happy. That's why she's over here trying to make him happy, because she did it, she liked it, and she does like Shaq. I knew that from the beginning. This had nothing to do with she wasn't attracted to Shaq. I know how a woman moves and shakes when they're attracted to a man, and I know a woman when she's trying to make a man chase her more because she wants him to chase her because that means he would do more for her. Kirsten is love language is acts of service. And the way you get a person continue and do acts of service is you keep telling them that what they're doing is not good enough, so they keep trying and doing more and more things. But they're two peas in a pod. They're two peas in a pod. We find out on the after party, you'll have to watch my video on that, but that whole weekend getaway that Shaq was all upset about was more than a conference. It was the big, it's not homecoming, but it's like that HBCU football game. It's a big deal. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of activities. So for Kirsten not to want to go to that or not go to that had nothing to do with Shaq didn't have enough plans. That might have been it too. She wanted more plans. Once again, a picky, it's not enough. He said he had a hotel room. He had things like that. What more does she need? She needed the whole itinerary laid out. Like I said, the invitation, a hotel room, and a plane ticket was not enough. She needed the itinerary of what are all the things we're going to do, what are all the things we're going to go to. Like I said, she needed more. And so then she stayed home and she planned that party with the friends. He says it wasn't that he just didn't want to take her to show her off. He wanted to do that too. He absolutely loves showing off Kirsten. That's another reason he likes her to go. This ain't no take your spouse to work day. Everybody doesn't bring their spouse to work as many times as Shaq keeps talking about. He does want to show Kirsten off. He does want to show everyone, look at my fine wife. He does, because they're all for show. They love to have an image. They love for you to look at them a certain kind of way. And let me tell you, this whole big fiasco at the little Cowtown, what is it, line dancing thing, where Miss Nicole is getting in everybody's business. We'll talk about that on the Nicole and Chris video. Be sure to check that out. But when Nicole is over there telling Kirsten what she needs to do in her marriage, and then speaking for Kirsten on behalf of Kirsten with Shaq, and then Kirsten is over there, mums the word, and she's silent, and then Shaq goes out the room because he doesn't like her response. It wasn't good enough. And she says, but I was rubbing your leg, I was rubbing your back, I was showing you nonverbal support by touching you and being close to you. And what does he say? Oh, that's not good enough. I want you to open up your mouth. Well, let me tell you why Kirsten was so stunned and why she couldn't open up her mouth. Because when Shaq was telling the story of, you know what, I used to be that person where everything on the outside seems perfect, but on the inside, I'm chaotic. Does that ring a bell, people? Does that ring a bell if any of you have been watching my videos all season? Does that ring a bell when I told you that Kirsten on the outside, she looks proper, she looks perfect, but on the inside, she's chaotic? Does that ring a bell when I told you when we saw that apartment of hers and the apartment was clean and pristine, but the closet was chaotic? I said Kirsten on the outside is like this, but behind closed doors it's chaotic. Does that ring a bell when all she talks about is how her father provided and took care of her and her family, and he was the leader in the family, but we find out he left the family at 7 years old, and then we look at the house he provided, and it's really a very, very modest house, but what she tells us is not what we see. Does that ring a bell when she tells us she's a daddy's girl, but her daddy doesn't show up to the wedding? The daddy doesn't even want to meet the man that she's sleeping next to in the bed every single night, but she wants to present this image that she's a daddy's girl, and her father is just, they're so close and he's so involved in her life and all this other kind of stuff, but he ain't even on a phone call. And when she does talk to a parent on the phone, it's not even her own mother, it's now Shaq's mother. Have we even seen any of Kirsten's family members besides the wedding? Does any of this ring the bell when Shaq starts talking about on the outside it looks perfect, but on the inside it's chaotic? Does it ring a bell when I talk to you about Kirsten baking these cookies at the original open house? And I said, as a person who is in real estate, if I walked into a house and I saw an agent baking cookies, I would say, what smell are you trying to cover up in this house? I don't want no baking. I don't want no cookies baking when I come to look at a house, because I want to be able to sniff that house. And I want to be able to know if there are any smells in the house that I don't like. Maybe some mold, maybe some fungus. I don't know. I don't want no cookies distracting me from what I'm here to do, which is to investigate and look at this house. But Kirsten wants the aroma of cookies going through the house. Does any of this ring a bell of a picture perfect scenario, but chaotic on the inside? When Shaq was telling his story of this is what I used to suffer through. Shaq, you didn't used to suffer through it. You still suffer through it. You might have gone to therapy. You might have gotten help. You might be better, but it's still there. But that's okay. It's still there, but you need to acknowledge it. And Kirsten, she's one step below Shaq because she doesn't even acknowledge it. She doesn't even acknowledge it. So when she sat there next to her husband and she heard him talking about how he used to be prim, proper, perfect on the outside, bow ties, put a bow tie on it, but behind closed door, it's chaotic. She couldn't even open her mouth because she was stunned. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think it was because she was insensitive. I think it's because she was stunned, because here her husband was talking about something that so resonates with her, she couldn't get any words out. Kirsten was stunned. I don't think it was a lack of empathy. I don't think it was a lack of sympathy. I think it was an overwhelming amount of her resonating with her husband. In that moment, she didn't even know what to say or what to do. And like she said, when they got outside, he was so quick to get up and run outside. She was like, dang, I didn't even get a minute to think. And what she was saying was, I didn't even get a minute to gather myself, because those words stung me so hard. I couldn't even focus on your pain because you were hitting so close, so deep in my own heart. I had to recover myself first. That's what I believe about Kirsten, because these two people are the same exact people. I said it from the very beginning. I said it from the very beginning, since that matchmaking special, even Dr. Pepper called it. She said that he can be picky, and we found out very early on she was just as picky. And the two of these people, what they like to do is they like to nitpick on each other, nitpick of what's not good enough, because what they want you to do is more and more and more and more. That's what they really don't. They're not trying to push you away. What they're really trying to do is draw you near, because drawing you near makes you do more acts of service. And the more acts of service you do, the more they feel loved. Remember when Shaq said he felt like his mama was never there for him? Remember that? Remember when Shaq would always tell Kirsten that I felt like my mom wasn't there for me that much, maybe because her mom had to raise the kids by herself. She had to work, but he felt like she didn't do enough for him. He needed more love. Well, now he is over here trying to get that love from Kirsten. And now we got Shaq's mother telling Kirsten he needs more support. Well, probably the reason why he needs so much support is because he felt he didn't get it in his childhood, and now I got to make up for it. That mama better think a little bit about what she's talking about. She better think about a little bit what she's talking about, because she's talking about how Kirsten needs to give a Shaq more support. But some of this stuff comes from his childhood. Some of this stuff comes from his childhood. And now Kirsten is like, dang, how much support do I need to do? Yeah, I've made mistakes here and there, but goodness, I thought I was improving. I thought I was doing more, but it's still not enough. No, just like what Shaq does to you, Kirsten, is not enough. Is a modest 2-bedroom house enough for you? A modest 3-bedroom house? No, you want a $2.9 million house. But you know, the thing you don't ever really hear these two talking about or what they're going to do. They're really good at asking things from each other, but they're not really good at necessarily wanting to do a whole lot of things for each other. And that's what they call each other out on. Shaq wants this woman to go around with him to his job and be the arm candy and all that, all his office events. Like I said from the very beginning, he wanted arm candy. If I hire you to be the arm candy, you missing these events, Kirsten. That's what he's saying. I got married to you because I wanted arm candy, and I'm not getting what I want because you ain't going nowhere with me to be my arm candy. That was the point of things. He told Dr. Pepper he wanted arm candy. That's what he told her. You got Shaq over here complaining about what Kirsten isn't doing enough, but then when Kirsten asks something for Shaq, talking about buy me a house, do this, he says we should be doing it together. They're two peas in the pod. They got a whole list of things they want you to do, but the minute you ask something to them, they tell you, oh, that's too much. Why are you asking me for all that? These two are tit for tat. They're going to be tit for tat in a marriage. But you know what? I still say they're good for each other. You know why they're good for each other? Because if any one of these two gets with a person who says a giver, a person who's a real giver, what will happen is they will extract and extract and extract. And that giver will keep giving and giving and giving. By the time the giver figures out what's going on, they will be so depleted. They will feel like this person took so much from me. I have nothing left, right? That's what would happen. But the fact that these two both know how to ask, come tell you, every single episode, they asking for something. Ask, 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 ask. They need to teach Jasmin over there. Jasmin don't know how to ask for anything, but these two over here, between Kirsten and Shaq, they know how to ask all day long. And when they don't get what they want, they both pout. They both pout. And they both try to extract more and more for you and tell you what you need to do more. They two peas in a pod. Two peas in a pod. I can't believe all this time they've been actually doing it. I don't even know when they maybe done it. I know when we saw that whipped cream and she was doing all that gyrating and dancing and she was talking about, oh, this is turning me on. I know what happened before then. Because like Shaq said on the after party, it happened very early in the marriage. He said very early in the marriage, and they've been doing it ever since. It wasn't a one-time hit, one-time wonder. No, they did it. Kirsten liked it. And whatever his inches are, she's been satisfied with it because she's doing all she can to keep him in the game. And she's doing everything she can to say, you worrying or don't be worrying about nothing, or we going to be just fine. She's been saying it for several episodes. She's perfectly comfortable with the bedroom action. So everybody who was talking about, well, Shaq can't put it down and Shaq can't do this and all this other kind of stuff, he's not masculine enough. Well, guess what? He's good enough for her. And all this other stuff, when she was calling him last week, he's not masculine. That's not what she really should have used. Those weren't the words. Because even though she's got a bachelor's and a master's, Kirsten doesn't really know how to say things correctly. What she was really saying is she wants him to do more. And what you're really finding out is they both are asking each other to be the parents that they didn't have. Shaq over here said that his mother wasn't really there for him, didn't do as much for him as he wanted. Now he wants a wife that does that, makes up for what the mama didn't did. Kirsten wants us to believe that her daddy did everything, but now we know he didn't. We know that daddy didn't do everything. And now what she's looking for is she's looking for a man to do not only more than what her daddy did, not only what her daddy did, but even more. These two are asking for things. They act like they're accustomed to it and used to it. At least Kirsten is. And the truth of the matter is they're not accustomed to it. They both would drain a person. I could see how after a while people would walk away from Kirsten. They would be drawn to her because she's very good looking. She's very cute. And then she would ask and ask and ask. And after a while, they would just quit. They would just say, Kirsten is like a job that continually wants you to work overtime. Nothing you do is good enough. And you say after a while, this job ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. And you pack your bags and you go. And Shaq, because he's the male and he's probably the one that does more of the hunting with women, the women can do a whole lot of things for Shaq and they won't be good enough. And he'll be like, well, I like you, but you still don't do these things. And so I'm not going to actually choose you and pick you. This is why these two were single before Married at First Sight. It is their pickiness, their insatiable need to be pleased and people to do things for them, so they're never ever satisfied. It's written all over the wall. All over the wall. Now we find out Shaq is even talking about, well, I was upset because, I'm not graduating on time with my PhD. And she's like, I was helping you. I would check in on you and ask you, are you getting the help you need? Maybe he did need some help and maybe he needed to go over and talk to someone else. He probably blaming somebody else too for not getting his PhD. Talking about probably something he should have received from somebody else that he didn't get, so he didn't finish his work on time. Boy, Shaq, get out of here. Get out of here. When that mama was talking to Kirsten and telling her you need to be more supportive, she didn't really have no real specifics, because all she hears from her son is saying that she's not supportive. She's not supportive. I need more. I need more. She didn't even give Kirsten no real specifics besides not going on this trip. That's what I'm saying. Some of this stuff that they do is very, very, very nitpicky. Very nitpicky. Just like we said with Kirsten in the very beginning, it seems trivial. It seems, why are you making this big deal out of over these small things? That's what I'm talking about. They are both very, very, very picky. And I don't call that, I know a lot of people want to classify Shaq as being, oh, he's sweet, he's got sugar in the tank because he's picky. And they're so-called viewing that as a feminine trait, that pickiness is a feminine trait. No, it's not. Lots of men are picky. A lot of women don't realize that they're not chosen because picky men came upon them and those men didn't choose them because those men were picky too. That doesn't necessarily mean you're sweet because you're picky. Kirsten is picky and so is Shaq. It has nothing to do with the fact that so-called a Shaq wants to swim in another tank or another swimming pool. I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that at all. Never have. Even before they spilled the beans that they had actually consummated the marriage and they didn't even want to tell then. And everybody up here is trying to give them advice on this whole Memphis trip. Everybody getting invested, and these fools over here are running game, lying to everybody for the last month and a half. And Airris said, well, what if you would have told her, pack your shit, you going? Airris, get out of here with your advice. And Kirsten looked over at him and said, no, I wouldn't want it to be said like that. That's a little bit too much. But I do sometimes need a more leadership. What she was saying was, it wasn't what he said, it was what he does. See, Airris was thinking that what she needed was to be told what to do, to be a more assertive and say, do this. But that's not what Kirsten really needs. Kirsten doesn't want to be told what to do, because oftentimes Shaq tried to tell her what to do and she didn't want him to do that. She doesn't really like that. What Kirsten wants you to do is do more. So Kirsten said it correctly. It wasn't that I wanted him to say, I pack your shit and you going. What I wanted him to do was say, I got the hotel, I got the plane ride, this is how we're getting to the airport. When we're there on day one, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to this ball, we're going to go to this party, and then we're going to have dinner here, and then we're going to do this. Kirsten wants you to have planned everything and have done everything. You hear my words? D-O-N-E, done, not talk, done. Her love language is not words of affirmation, talk. Her love language is do. Don't just tell me, do it. And if you haven't done it, it doesn't count. That's who she is. So Airris, get out of here with that talking about, oh, maybe I just need to come up here and tell you to pack your shit. And she shut it down real quick. She said, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I need. Like I told everybody, let me tell you, Airris and Kirsten would make a horrible couple. Horrible couple, because Airris don't do anything either. Like Kirsten said, Shaq's talking about he's not getting support. Kirsten said, well, I feel like I give support. She told Devon, I feel like I give support. I do this and that. You do give support, Kirsten. It's not good enough. Just like what Shaq does for you is not good enough. It's not a matter of do either of you do anything. You both do things, but you don't appreciate what each other does. What each other does for each other is never good enough. You guys all want more. And Devon Franklin got to it. He said that is a life. You eventually grow to resent each other, and it diminishes what each other has already done. And that's why I said about picky people. picky people diminish what you've already done, it's not good enough. It actually invalidates people. It actually makes people not feel accepted. And let me tell you, that doesn't work on everyone. A lot of people, what they do is when you don't appreciate what they do, when you don't validate the things they've done, what they go to is they just stop doing anything. When you say you're not doing enough and they think they're doing a lot, they don't keep trying harder and harder. Maybe in the beginning they do, but after a while they say, well, hell, if you never really going to appreciate anything I do, then I might as well not do anything at all. If every time I do something for you, you tell me it's not good enough, then what's the point of trying? Why do anything anymore? That's what you get to with a partner. I bet you, Kirsten, if she looks back at her dating life, there were men who were very, very eager in the beginning to please her. Very, very eager. They probably did a lot of things to please her. They liked her. They might have loved her. And then probably what she noticed in the relationship was it started to fall off. She started to get less and less. And what she's thinking is, why did he stop doing things? The reason people stop doing things is because they calculate in their head and they say, when I do A, B, C, she still complains that I don't do D, E, and F, right? So I never get to a place where I'm accepted, where I'm appreciated. So if I'm still never going to be accepted and appreciated, why do I even do A, B, and C? So that's what starts to happen. They stop doing C, then they stop doing B, then they stop doing A, then pretty soon, you're right. Your words now are correct. I don't do a shit for you. That's what it starts to look like. You're right. I don't do anything for you. Not anymore. Not anymore, because you didn't appreciate and you didn't validate and you didn't put any value to what I was doing before. So now I don't do shit. That's what I know. That's what Kirsten's dating life looks like. I absolutely know it. And Shaq's dating life looks at women tried to be there, tried to support him, and he always had a complaint. He was very picky, and in the end, he didn't want to be with them. He let them go. He didn't accept them. He didn't want to be with them. That's what they look like. That's what their dating lives looked like before they were put here in this Married at First Sight experiment. And now we're moving on to Nicole and Chris, and I just want to say this to Nicole. Shh. Be quiet. Stop talking. Nicole is exhausting. But you know what? I got the antidote for Nicole. I got the antidote now for Nicole. Let me tell you what I noticed about Nicole. And I actually know why Nicole has been in abusive relationships, because in a lot of ways, Nicole is abusive. Nicole really does insert herself a lot in things. Remember in the beginning of the season, everybody said, Nicole will run over you. Nicole runs over guys. Nicole runs over people. And now that we know how low the self-esteem of the body image issues that she has, it makes you think, how the heck could Nicole run over anybody with this low self-esteem? If you ever wanted to put Nicole 2 feet under, you know exactly what to tell her. Talk about her body. Talk about her looks. Anytime you want to get Nicole to back up off of you, what you would do is you would talk about her body and you would talk about her looks. So what I'm realizing now is Nicole tries to run over people by over-inserting herself in things and sticking her nose in the issues where she shouldn't be. And then what happens is you keep telling her to stop doing it, stop doing it. She says, oh, I'm sorry, I know I do it all the time, but it's just who I am. And then she just keeps doing it. So the only way you can get her off of you is to talk about her weight or her looks. That makes her back up. That becomes your weapon of choice to get her to stop. Because when you ask her to stop doing it, don't do it, I don't like it, it's too much, she doesn't stop. She still finds a reason or excuse to over-insert herself. She goes, well, I know I'm just doing it because of this. When she was over there getting in Shaq and Kirsten's business, I just do it because I talked to Kirsten and I know what she's thinking. I don't care if you know what she's thinking. It doesn't mean you need to open up your mouth. It doesn't need to mean you need to insert yourself. Just because you know doesn't mean you need to open your mouth. So when you keep asking a person like when you keep asking a person like Nicole to stop, you say, hey, I really don't like when you do that. I don't like when you keep saying this. I don't like it. And she does it anyway. You say, how the heck will I get this girl off of me? You know what you do is you put her down and you tell her something about her body. And then you know what she does? She'll go over in the corner and she'll cry. That's how you'll get her off of you. When they told her in the very beginning, hey, don't be asking Chris every single day, does he love you? She says, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to ask him every single day. I hear what Pastor Cal is telling me to do, but I don't care. I'm going to ask him every single day. She doesn't listen. Pastor Cal said, don't do that, because on days when it's not so good, you might hear bad news, and that's going to make you feel a certain kind of way. Come to find out, on the after party, she did exactly the opposite of what Pastor Cal told her. She said every day she asked Chris, how are we doing? Are you in love with me? And then for every day he would say, I don't really like you today. I like you today. I really don't like you today. They have this running joke. She calls it a joke, but it's really true. Who wants to do that every single day? But she did it. And finally she got the I love you of this episode. But every day they're going through this thing. Do you like me? No, I don't really like you today. I like you a little bit. I like you more yesterday. I don't like you this little bit now. Ugh. But it doesn't matter. The point of the matter is, when people tell her don't do something, she still continues to do it. And the way, if you're with a person like Nicole, the only way that you get them off of you, that you can shoo them away, is you sucker punch them. You sucker punch them so hard in an area that will make them double over and go in the corner and leave you alone, because they're a pest. And that's what Nicole does. Now I know why she got abused in relationships verbally by men, because men start to verbally abuse her, because in a lot of ways she's abusing other people. Because when people tell you to stop doing something, but you keep doing it, you're a bully. When people tell you to stop doing something, but you keep doing it, you're bullying them. You may not be bullying them with nasty words or hitting them or anything like that, but you're constantly doing something to them that they tell you they don't like, they don't want, but you keep doing it. And that's Nicole. She bullies people. That's what they said when she'll run all over you. That's what I mean. Because the two weren't lining up for me. I'm looking, because I don't know how she could run all over a man. I don't know how she could run all over a man. And how is she getting abused in relationships? And now I see it. I absolutely see it. Because even if I were friends with Nicole and she overinserted herself in my life too much, after a while, I would snap back on her. I sure would. I probably would say something mean to her. If I keep asking you nicely over and over again, don't do this, don't do that, don't say those things to me, don't get in my business that way, and you keep doing it, after a while, I'm going to snap on you too, and I'm going to say something mean and nasty to you too, because you're actually hurting me. You're hurting me, and I'm telling you you're hurting me, but you won't stop, so I'm going to have to snap back on you. And those men, that's what they did. They started snapping back on her and burning her with cigarettes to get her to leave them the hell alone. And this cycle that she's in with Chris, I like Chris. Chris says, you're confusing. You're confusing. You want me to somehow be able to read your mind. You say one thing, but you want me to do another thing. You tell me to do one thing, but you really don't want me to do that thing. You want me to do something different. And I'm supposed to have some book, some code book to understand all these messed up emotions that you have. She's like, girl, you are confusing me. A good for Chris for saying, you know what, I'm here to support you. But some of this stuff you asking is ridiculous. Some of this stuff you're asking is ridiculous, and it's starting to drive him crazy as well. But he's in la la land. You know why he's in la la land? Because for once, he's in a relationship with someone that's more emotional than him. Because she is a hot, hot mess. And I can imagine that in past relationships, Chris was the hot mess. Chris was the hot mess. But he's come to a point where he says, I don't mind her being the hot mess, because sometimes I am too. He even pointed out, hey, when I was a hot mess over these dogs and not knowing what to do, you stepped in and held me up. You stepped in and became my support system. And he says, I appreciate that. He says, so I don't mind being the person that comforts you and holds you up while you're a hot mess. That, you know what, they really are made for each other. They really are made, and it takes the pressure off of Chris, because with any other type of woman, Chris might feel like he's the hot mess in the relationship. But with Nicole, he feels perfectly normal. He feels wonderful. Wonderful. She over here talking about, when I tell you I need space, I don't really need space. I want you to chase after me and ask me what I want. So she believes that people should know that when you say one thing, it's not what you really mean. Does that mean that when people tell her, stay out of my business, leave me alone, the reason why she doesn't do it is because she thinks they don't really mean it? So when she says, stay away from me, leave me alone, it's not what she really means. It means she really wants you to probe her. I guess she thinks that when people tell her, stay out of my business, don't do that, it means that they really don't mind that she does it. That's why she keeps going. This girl This girl, she a mess. The amount of validation and assurance that she needs is overwhelming. But Chris said, I'm here for it. He says, I'm here to give you all you need. I'm here to serve it up like ice cream, unlimited supply. I got everything you need. And the more you need, the more I got to give. He is, I'm telling you, he may get weary sometimes, but for the most part, Chris is happy. Chris is happy, just like he told her, I love you. I know he loves you because it makes him feel even more accepted. It makes him feel more normal. This trauma bonding that they have done has been wonderful to make him feel like he's not the outcast in the relationship. She really is a self-saboteur of her own life, though. She really is. But I don't think there's too many other people who could put up with Nicole. I don't think there are too many other people. I think he's the perfect match for her. I really do believe it. And hopefully she'll get better. She'll do a lot less of what she's doing. But she also needs to equate this thing about when people are mean to her and why they're mean to her. And that is because she needs to learn some boundaries. I really hope that he doesn't get to the point where he's saying nasty things to her to get her off of him in certain areas. I don't see that coming. But if it does come, she needs to look at what she's doing. Because Nicole would absolutely drive a person to the point where they snap on her because she doesn't know when to stop. She doesn't know when enough is enough. She just keeps coming and coming and coming. It's too much. It's too much. She's over here telling people, Shaq and Kirsten, I'm going to tell your business. I'm going to tell what you're thinking because I know who you are. I got the best advice. I'm telling everybody you need to do more work. I need more from you. When she was over there telling Airris, I need more from you, Airris looked at her like, girl, get out my face. Airris was not hearing Nicole, telling Nicole what she needs from Airris. Airris is like, what you need from me? You don't need nothing from me. How do you go up to another man in a marriage and say, what I'm going to need you to do is this? You ain't married to Airris. This girl, she was out of control. She was out of control. The experts have finally shown up, Nicole. We got Pastor Devon on deck. We got Pastor Cal. We got Dr. Pepper on deck. So you can retire. You can go over there and sit in the corner. We don't need you no more. We don't need you anymore. We got some other more professionals. We're going to use professionals lightly, but we got more professionals on deck now. And you can stop going over to other men and women and telling them what you're going to need from them. What type of effort we going to need. She need to worry about herself because she got her own issues, her own problems. And she needs to stop over-inserting herself in other people's issues and work on her own issues because she got a lot of them. A lot of them. Now we're moving on to Jasmin and Airris, and boy, oh boy, they gave them an out. Dr. Pepper gave them an out. She held up the exit sign and she said, do you both want out? Do you want to quit now? Do you want to move on? And I was sitting there holding my breath saying, is Airris going to say, yes, he wants out? Here's his out. Here is Airris' out. Do you want out, Airris? And you know what Airris said? No. Airris said, no, I want to try harder, but because there are these moments when we really do have a good time, and I want more of those good times. And Jasmin's face lit up like a bright star. That's all she's ever wanted. And her face lit up like a bright star. Why didn't Airris take the out, y'all? Why didn't Airris take the out? I'm going to tell you why Airris didn't take it out. Because Airris is finally getting some of the help that he actually needed before he got into this experiment. He's finally getting some therapy, free therapy here on TV with Married at First Sight that he needed before he got on this show. Airris absolutely needed therapy, and he's using Jasmin and this marriage to get the therapy he needs. The problem is it's doing a lot of damage to Jasmin in the process and has done a lot of damage to Jasmin in the process. That's why I always said that Airris wasn't ready for marriage, and now this marriage and Jasmin has become the guinea pig for Airris. I'm also going to go back to what I said from the very, very beginning. I did another parody video on these two saying that Airris not being attracted to Jasmin had nothing to do with her looks, and that what Airris has always been afraid of was being vulnerable and open to love, and Jasmin just happens to be the woman standing in front of him. It wouldn't have mattered what woman you put in front of Airris. He would have had these problems. It's just like over there with Kirsten and Shaq. It had nothing to do with Shaq's bald head. It had everything to do with who Kirsten is, and then Shaq, his little pickiness has nothing to do with Kirsten. It has to do with who he is. None of this with Airris has to do with Jasmin. Now, we're hearing a little bit more about their conversations, and it's also coming more and more clear. One of the things I talked about on my earlier video of when things really went wrong with Jasmin and Airris was on the honeymoon. Okay, Airris wants to say he was never physically attracted to Jasmin. That's not true. Even last week, he tried to lie to us and say that the only reason I clapped was because Pastor Cal told me to. That's a lie. Let me clear that up right now. The reason why Airris told Jasmin to her face, the only reason I clapped for you is because Pastor Cal told me to. I'm going to tell you what the conversation was before then. I didn't hear it, but I know what it was. Jasmin probably went to Airris and said, I don't really even understand how you're not even attracted to me, because when I came down the aisle, you was clapping for me. You told me that I was beautiful and I was a queen, I was pretty, but now all of a sudden you tell me you're not physically attracted to me. Then what Airris did, because Airris doesn't really want you to see the real inside of him. He doesn't really want you to see his soul. What Airris then said to you, said was, I only clapped because Pastor Cal told me to. That was a snapback to get Jasmin off her point, because Jasmin knew what I knew, and that is how could all of a sudden you not be attracted to me? I'm not an ugly woman. How could you not be attracted to me to this degree? It had nothing to do with her physical appearance, and that last little statement he made last week, that was a lie too, to keep covering up who he is, because like I told you, Airris is a robot. Airris is a robot. And what Airris is really good at is once you program him, he's able to also execute it. He's a robot. Just like on this little episode when Dr. Pepper said when Jasmin was complaining about he wouldn't even call me unless I called him. He doesn't even send me a text. What do you mean? You're not thinking about your wife? Anything? You don't send a text, a call, nothing throughout the whole day? And Dr. Pepper had to tell Airris, why don't you put a timer on your phone to remind you to call your wife? Why don't you program it in your phone so you remember to do these things? Everybody has to program Airris so that he thinks about it, because he doesn't think about it. He's a person with no feeling, no soul. He hasn't been taught how to feel. He hasn't been able to do that for so many years. All that stuff is dead inside of him. It's going to have to be awakened in him. It's going to have to be reprogrammed in him, because he's been this person he is for so long. He's a robot. He doesn't even have any good data inside of him. Any programmers out there know he's got bugs. He needs to be wiped clean, reprogrammed, and then sent back out in the world. He needs to be stripped down, delete, reprogrammed, and sent back out there. He's a robot. He is a robot. But I'm going to get back to this point about when everything went bad with Airris and Jasmin. It went bad on the honeymoon. One of the things that we're finding out, you hear Airris say, I open up to Jasmin all the time, but she doesn't have anything to say. I keep telling her about, my friend that got murdered, my daddy. Here we are back to this death thing over and over again. How many times do we have to talk about this friend dying? I mean, how many times do we have to talk about death? When Airris talks about how he has opened up to Jasmin, he's opened up to her about the same thing over and over again. The friend dying over and over again. And what Jasmin is saying to him, well, I'm sorry that he has had so many people who have died in his life, and he can list them all down. He can show the obituaries. He's got it around his neck. I mean, good Lord. She's saying, I haven't had that trauma in my life, that particular trauma. I haven't experienced it. So I don't have any stories to tell Airris in return for that. Airris wants to trauma bond over these death stories. And Jasmin is telling him, I probably can count on my hand how many people have died that I even known. And half of them people weren't even really close to me. She's saying, I can't relate to it. What went wrong with Airris and Jasmin in the very beginning was Airris figured out really, really soon that he was a jacked up person in this relationship. He was the jacked up person, and he felt embarrassed by it. He felt insecure by it, and he might have even felt a little bit judged by it by Jasmin in the beginning. In that video I did, which was put it, maybe I don't know. You have to look for it on my channel. It was a video about them talking. I don't know if you guys remember. They were by the ocean, and he was talking very openly and honestly to Jasmin, and he was telling her, I've never been married. I mean, I've never been in love before. I've never really even lived with a woman. He was actually very confessing all the things he's never done. And Jasmin's look on her face was like, oh, what's wrong with you? Her red flags were going off, her buzzers. And Airris saw it. Airris saw the expressions on Jasmin's face. Airris saw that Jasmin was taken aback. Airris saw that Jasmin became concerned. And it was in those moments that Airris shut down. And what he decided to do was he decided to say, I'm not the problem, Jasmin, you're the problem. That was his defense mechanism, because in the beginning, he was really telling everything that he knew was the problem with him in some areas. He didn't know everything, but he was saying a few things. And when he talked to Jasmin, Jasmin wasn't able to keep a poker face. The expression was all over her face. And she even said, well, if you've never been in love before, how would I expect you to fall in love with me? That's concerning to me. And it was in those moments when she started expressing doubt, her own fear, it made him fearful. And then that's when he switched to saying, I'm not going to make this about me and my trauma and what's wrong with me and how I haven't been in love. I'm going to now make this about Jasmin. That's when he went on telling her, you too much of a goody two shoes. That's what he was telling her. You giving me too much prim and proper. What did he say? I need more Horace. What he was saying for you was, you don't have no trauma like me. What, are you perfect? Are you perfect? Are you the beauty queen, a perfect woman? Here you are perfect. Your mom and daddy still together. You a preacher's kid. You ain't had no trauma, nothing in your life. Oh, so you're perfect and I'm the one that's messed up? No. And what Airris decided to do, subconsciously, unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever you want to call it, deliberately, I don't care. What he tried to do was say, I'm going to flip this around. And I don't want this to be about my trauma. I'm going to make it about you, Jasmin. And I'm going to start telling you how you not that perfect. And look what's wrong with you. You ain't got no booty. You ain't got no sneakers. You ain't got no swag. You ain't got this. You ain't got that. And that's how we got here. That's how we got here. And let me tell you something. That little thing that happened killed this marriage from the very, very beginning. But it all really started because of the two people's fears. One, the fear was that Jasmin, who her fear is that she won't be accepted. We're all seeing how deeply rooted it is with Jasmin, how she suffers from low self-esteem, how she wants to be accepted. So her fear of not being accepted was on high alert. And then when Airris said, I've never even been in love, her fears went from level 0 to level 100. And her fears triggered his fears. They triggered each other. His fears of never being in love triggered her fears of never being accepted. And then he was also triggered because what he realized was, she's so scared she might reject me. This is really, really a sad to watch. It really is sad to watch. They both came in here with some different types of trauma. Jasmin says she doesn't have any, she's going around saying, well, I don't really have anything to talk about. But Devon Franklin pointed out very clearly to her, yeah, you do. You got a lot of trauma in your life as well. Just because you might have not had the same type of trauma Airris has had, you've had a lot of trauma. This idea of being bullied and never being good enough, that's trauma. And what he was saying was, you need to tell those stories, because when you tell those stories to a person like Airris, who also has a bunch of trauma, then you can trauma bond with them. You may not be trauma bonding over the same exact issue, but what it does is it humanizes you, okay? It also makes people realize you have flaws too, you're vulnerable and you're sensitive too, so I don't mind showing you my sensitivity as well. And that's what Devon Franklin was trying to tell Jasmin to do. But here's the problem that I still say Airris is in a safe space, and I don't think that Airris should have been married, is because what Airris does is Airris has this other part of him that he likes to get at you, and he's mean and he gets back at you. And this is the part that a vulnerable person would still fall victim to Airris. Just like I said, how it all went sour once Airris felt vulnerable because he felt like Jasmin might reject him, he decided to start picking at her. Well, in this little episode, they kept telling Jasmin, you need to stand up more and talk about your feelings, your true feelings, when you're feeling a certain kind of way. Jasmin says, got it. I'm going to start now saying how I feel a kind of certain way in that moment. Well, when they were at the little two-step line dancing, Jasmin became upset about Airris dancing with this woman, that she felt, why is he dancing with her and not with me? And even on the after party, Shaq is on the after party. Also, Nicole is on the after party. They both said that they all saw Airris start dancing with that woman, and they all knew themselves that that was going to be a problem. But nobody knew it. Obviously, Airris didn't know it. Everybody else knew it was going to be a problem, but Airris didn't know. Okay, let's go with that. Jasmin in that moment feels slighted. She's upset. Jasmin does what everyone else has been telling her to do. Jasmin then says, you know what, I'm upset. I'm not going to brush it under the rug and pretend like it's not a big deal. I'm not going to suffer in silence. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk out because it upset me. Now, maybe she should have approached him right then and there in front of everybody else. Who knows? Another woman would have gone right in there and said something right to Airris's face or to that woman's face or in that moment. But Jasmin's not confrontational. So what she did do was she walked out. So at least she did something. At least she did something to show that, hey, I don't like this. Okay, so she's making progress. She's speaking up. When she goes outside and says, what was that? What does Airris do? Diminish her feelings and tell her, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. He even told Devon Franklin or Pastor Cow or Dr. Pepper, whoever that was, that she blew it up more than it was. Well, wait a minute. You can't tell me to express my feelings and to talk about how I feel and then come behind me and diminish me for what I just said. That's not a safe space. If I'm a person where it's hard for me to tell you when I'm upset and it's hard for me to express my feelings, when I do express my feelings, the last thing I want to be told is that my feelings are invalid. They're too much. No. And that's what I'm saying about Airris, that he really isn't a safe space because Airris really isn't in a place where he can even receive constructive criticism. When he receives constructive criticism, what he does in retaliation is to lash back out at you. So Jasmin, who has a problem speaking her mind and being rejected if she says something that you don't like, Airris is not a safe space for her because that's exactly what Airris does. When you tell something to Airris that you don't like, what he does is he punishes you for it. Just like he punished her last week and told her, I only clap for you because Pastor Cow told me. That was a punishment. That was a dig. She told him the day, I didn't like that you were dancing with that instructor. Later on, what does he say? She overreacted. He's not a safe space. He's not a safe space for a person who's trying to learn to gather their voice. He isn't a good listener. He's not Chris. He's not a good listener. He's not supportive. Because he's got so much trauma going on in himself, it triggers him. From the very beginning, when Jasmin said, it concerns me that you've never been in love, she spoke her mind, she spoke her fear, she talked about what she was really feeling, she really did say it, but guess what? He's so wounded that when he heard it, instead of saying, I could understand that, what he did was he started retaliating against her and started telling her her booty ain't big enough. He's not a safe space. The type of work that Jasmin needs to do, and she does have a lot of work she needs to do. She can't do it with Airris. She can't do it with Airris. And honestly, the work that Airris needs to do as well. He talks about he wants to be the leader of the family. But in a lot of ways, he doesn't want to lead. He doesn't want to lead one bit. Jasmin talks a lot about she sweeps things under the rug because she's afraid about what people's reactions will be. She'll be afraid that they'll reject her. Well, guess what? Her fears were true. When she was speaking her mind in the beginning of the marriage, when she was telling how she really felt, her real fears, guess what happened? She got rejected. When she told him, listen, I'm afraid you won't fall in love with me. I'm afraid of all these different things. And guess what he did? he started rejecting her. So to tell her that, Jasmin, you need to just keep saying things, just keep talking, and don't worry about the rejection. Nah, no, I don't agree with that. That work that she needs to do can't be done with Airris because the likelihood of the rejection is too high. It's not as if Jasmin is over here married to a Chris. If she's married to a Chris, I absolutely say what Devon Franklin said. I say you need to keep talking about it and let your husband be your safe space. Just like they're telling Nicole she needs to keep talking. I would absolutely tell Jasmin, keep talking. But I would not give that advice with Airris because Airris has proven that the times when Jasmin has opened up and shared, he is in a safe space. He takes digs at her. Even the time back in the apartment when she was opening up and he was eating the tacos and she said, what do you think about what I said? You know what he did? Oh, I'm too busy eating my tacos. He's not a safe space. The work that Jasmin needs to do, she can't do it with Airris because Airris is triggered by it. Airris is triggered by any type of constructive criticism, and that's what he thinks of it is. When Jasmin talks about her fears or what she doesn't like, Airris hears it as criticism and he's triggered by it. And then what he does is he now wants to say something bad about her and say she ain't got no swag, no tennis shoes. And that's why it keeps changing. Every week it's something new because it's not really built on anything. It's just a matter of, did she make him feel a kind of way? Did she make him feel inadequate? Because that's what Airris feels. Airris feels inadequate. And if Jasmin expressing fears, wow, her fears make him feel even more inadequate. So what does he does? He lashes out and he says something about her. Your booty ain't big enough. You ain't got enough swag. You ain't got no tennis shoes. Too much trauma between these two in terms of the areas they need to work on, and they really shouldn't do the work together. They really can't do the work together. They keep trying to work on this physical attraction with Jasmin, and that's not the attraction he needs. He needs an emotional attraction. He needs an emotional attraction. That's why he says maybe if we have deeper conversations. What he's saying is maybe if we have deeper conversations, we trauma bond, and you don't judge, and I don't feel judged by my trauma or my things in the past, then that will make me become more emotionally safe with you, and then I'll like you physically. I don't really want them working on any more physical attraction stuff, talking about holding hands, hugging and kissing. That's not Airris's problem. Airris's problem is Jasmin is scary in terms of her own emotions, and so what he feels is that he won't be able to be what he needs to be for her, and that makes him not attracted to her. He's not emotionally attracted to Jasmin because he's actually afraid of a lot of things about Jasmin. That's really what it is. He's really afraid of a lot of things about Jasmin. And that fear that isn't quiet inside of him doesn't arouse him sexually. And the reason why he's able to have all this indiscriminate sex with other women is because there's no vulnerability in that equation when you're just having indiscriminate R&B sex videos. None of this emotional stuff even comes into play because he's just basically smashing and grabbing women. So yeah, he can do that all day long. But here with Jasmin, this emotional stuff and talking about stuff, that's affecting his actual physical attraction. But they keep wanting to do things that are going to improve the physical attraction. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with her physical looks or anything. It's all emotional trauma, period. Jasmin was talking about they have a lot in common. She was talking about she really thought the marriage could work. I was like, what? Really, Jasmin? What do these two have in common? I don't know if this has been edited so much that we haven't seen the things that they have in common, but I really haven't seen a lot of things that Jasmin and Airris have in common. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen one thing that they have in common. Even Kirsten Shaq over here with all their problems, I can see everything that they have in common. I can see what Chris and Nicole have in common. I can even see, I don't know, I can't say it about Gina and Clint. But no, Gina and Clint, I do see the things they have in common. I'm still not trying to figure out what do Airris and Jasmin have in common. If any of you have seen it, I'll drop it down in the comments and enlighten me, please, what they have in common. I just think Jasmin is hopeful. I think she's hopeful, but I don't think Airris is a hopeful person because all he does is concentrate on death, destruction, and that's not hopeful. That's not thinking about life and going forward in the future. That's thinking about the past, what went wrong, and death. Two different types of perspectives. When they asked Airris, what would you need from Jasmin to feel more attracted to her? He said a deeper connection. What he's talking about is being able for me to trauma bond with you and also feel not alone, that I'm not the only one with trauma, that you got some trauma too. If a woman didn't have trauma with Airris, they would have to make up some stories. Because Jasmin's life, even with the things that she goes through in terms of being bullied and not feeling accepted, Airris says that in no way compares to my trauma. I'm gonna need some better stories than this. I'm gonna need some better stories than these stories that you coming up with, Jasmin. That ain't enough for me to feel accepted, because now I feel like I'm the messed up one, and I don't want to feel like the messed up one. Just like when Fatlina was going over there telling him about himself and telling him how messed up he was like, dang, Fatlina, why are you telling me all this? You know, there are parts when Airris was talking about he wants Jasmin to speak up. He says, I like a woman who speaks up and checks me and does this all kind of stuff, because he's a man that says a lot of BS out there. And what he's saying is, unless you program me, then that's the only way I'm going to be able to learn. So I can't really be with a woman who doesn't speak up, because I don't know nothing unless you program in me, and you got to tell me everything. But then on the other hand, if you tell him too much, then his feelings are hurt. Like I said, the work that Airris needs to do is, Jasmin's not the person to do the work with. She can't be his therapist. She cannot be her therapist, because she probably needs her own therapist. She has her own things she needs to work on, and she doesn't have enough to do it for her and for him. He needs a lot of work. Like I said, he is a robot. His stuff goes back so far, so deep, that even the things that he's saying that he wants, he doesn't realize he's not even ready for some of those things. He talks about he's ready for a woman that tells him about himself and checks him. No, he ain't. Not really. Not really, not at all. But at least they both getting some free therapy. They both are getting some free therapy, and hopefully maybe after this, they both go on and they continue with therapy. And then hopefully when they get into their next relationship, because I don't really know. I don't see these two making it. I just don't see them making it. I just don't. I think that they both can give each other what they need, and they both need to do healing outside of this show, and then they'll make a better mates or for someone going forward. That's all I can think. And Airris, he got a lot of work he needs to do. A lot of work. And now we're moving on to Clint and Gina, or as we're calling it, driving Miss Daisy. And if we driving Miss Daisy, Dr. Pepper, or who is Morgan Freeman? We know who Morgan Freeman is. Morgan Freeman is Clint, the ginger man. We are talking about driving Miss Daisy. Gina is the white woman sitting in the back with her slurs, calling people ginger, and Morgan Freeman is the one in front, with the one with the patience of having something to talk about, and Gina's the white woman in the back doing nothing but saying nasty things and complaining. That's who Gina was from the very beginning. And when Dr. Pepper said, driving Miss Daisy, I busted up laughing. At first I was like, how is that a romantic movie? But you know what? It is a perfect example of who these two are. Because Gina sat in the back seat of this wedding and still is sitting in the back seat, because she still don't do a doggone thing. She doesn't do anything. She sits in the back seat. She lets Clint sit in the front seat driving, do all the work. Clint got to cook. Clint got to clean. Clint got to take out the dog. Clint got to come up with all the fun. Clint got to come up with all the jokes. Clint got to come up with all the ideas. And Gina gets to act like the old white woman and sit in the back seat and complain and call the man in front who's driving the car slurs and of what he don't do and what he don't do right. It actually is a perfect movie. A perfect movie, Dr. Pepper. And I guess what she's hoping for is that Clint will be like a Morgan Freeman, and then eventually they'll fall in love, and the old white woman in the back of the car will eventually come to love and respect the guy in front. By the time she comes to love and respect the guy in front, Dr. Pepper, she's dying. She's dead. And that's the story of Gina. By the time Gina is figuring out that, dang, this stuff went real left, and maybe if I had never called him slurs, and maybe if I had done a little bit more, maybe if I were a different person, maybe this relationship wouldn't have gone off the cliff, because Gina absolutely drove this marriage off the cliff. Morgan Freeman may not have driven that car off the cliff. Listen to that white woman in the back snap back at him behind his neck and call him names. But guess what? Gina did that to Clint, and she better be glad Clint didn't drive their marital car, off the cliff. Come to find out that Clint's love language is acts of service, and Gina's love language is words of affirmation. So Gina's love language is words of affirmation, which makes sense on why she says all these nice things about herself that aren't true. Because what Gina really wants is she wants you to say those things. When I told you Gina embellishes stories, I said, why does she do that? Because really what she's doing is she's pumping up herself. And what she wants is she wants you to pump her up just like that. She wants you to say things about her that aren't true. So because no one is saying it, I'll say it myself. I got a 26-inch waist. I am fun. I'm outgoing. I'm athletic. I'm a beauty mogul. I have lots of salons. I'm building a new salon from scratch, not just a little salon suite. No, I'm building a whole building. Okay, Gina, I don't believe that. Think of all the stories Gina said about herself. I'm a bartender, but come to find out she was only pouring bar in plastic Solo cups. It was only beer. It wasn't even mixed drinks. Now we get it. Gina's love language is words of affirmation. That's her love language. And what she told, who was she with, Dr. Pepper, or I don't know, whoever she was with the counselor. She said, that's what I need. I need more affirmations. Tell her how proud you of her. Tell her how beautiful she is. Tell her. That's why when Clint told her, you not all that, and I normally like slender women, that's why I hit so hard on Gina. Because Gina's love language is words of affirmation. And he stung her at her weakest and lowest and most vulnerable spot. And she hasn't been able to get over it. But guess what? Clint's love language is acts of service. And what does Gina do? Nothing. Have we seen Gina do anything for Clint? He's waiting. He said, can you cook me dinner? Can you do something for me? Can I come home and you've done a little bit of a decoration, something different than I'm used to? And she said, cooking is your job. There you go. Well, if you can't do anything for him, his love language is acts of service, then why should he tell you something sweet? Why should he put candy in your ears? Why should he blow you up? Because she wants all you to tell her how great she is, but she don't want to do nothing for Clint. This is why I now see this story about how McKinley drops down in her DMs. Because guess what? She's a sucker for words of affirmation. And if he laid any kind of words down on her at all in those DMs, Gina ate it up. She ate it up because that's what she likes to hear. She likes to hear how great she is. She got her own fan club. She had these stylists come over for that lasagna so they could puff her up and tell her how great she is. She loves to hear it. She wants a record put on. She says, oh, put some R&B on so R&B songs can tell her how great she is. That's okay if your love language is words of affirmation, but that means you need to give somebody else their love language. What you gonna do for Clint, Gina? In exchange for words of affirmation, what are you gonna do? I wanna see in these next episodes, is Gina gonna do something? Because I really haven't seen Gina do anything, nothing. And Clint is over here trying to love on her through acts of service. He's trying to do all these things for her, take the dog out, cook for her, clean for her, come up with fun things for them to do. Let's do this, let's do that, let's do activities, let's be adventurous. Those are doing things because that's his love language. But Gina's sitting over here saying, well, you're doing all those things, but you're not doing the things I need the most. And that is, tell me how beautiful and wonderful I am, how smart I am, and how successful I am. I need words, Clint. Don't just take me around and take me hiking and take me to the waterfall and love on my dog and do this. I need you to tell me how wonderful and great I am, how I got a 26-inch waist, how I'm beautiful, how I'm adventurous, how I'm athletic. Pump me up. Gas me up, Clint. Gas me up. It's sinking in. I can tell you, I can look at Gina and I could tell it's sinking into Gina for her to know she jacked this up. And now she's too scared and she's too proud to admit it. Gina's actually having a lot of fun with Clint, but now she's too proud to admit it. She's too proud to go back and apologize and talk about what she did wrong in the beginning of the relationship. And now let's wipe the slate clean because she's still too hurt over the words and she's too proud to admit she jacked this stuff up. She really is driving Miss Daisy. She was the white woman sitting in the back seat of the car, cussing and fussing and talking about the ginger man driving the car. But instead, in this episode, in this little gameplay, Morgan Freeman turned around and cussed out that white woman. That's how that movie would have gone with Gina and Clint. He didn't just keep looking forward and driving. Yep, I see it. I see driving, Miss Daisy. I see it. But you know what? Gina really messed this up. She really messed this up. In the beginning, I didn't even think that these two could make it. But I actually see a scenario and maybe when they could have made it. Do I think that Gina is actually Clint's exact type? No, I don't think she is. I don't think she is. But if Gina would have been outgoing and fun and a little bit different person, Clint would have overlooked it. Clint would have overlooked it because I think he does care for Gina. I think Clint would have overlooked it. He would have overlooked it because that little dig that she made at him, it stung him, it bothered him, but he was able to get over it. He was able to get over it. It's Gina who's gotten stuck. It's Gina who doesn't want to open up, be vulnerable and say, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong about Clint from the very beginning. I was wrong. I should have never said those things at all. And she still wants to talk about how, we both are in the friend zone. We both are in the friend zone. Gina, every time that question comes up, she interrupts Clint. Clint can't even answer. She's getting the answer out. Why is she getting the answer out so fast? Is because she doesn't want to hear him say something different. She doesn't want to hear him say something different because then that would open up a whole emotional Pandora's box. And she doesn't want to open up that box. She doesn't want to open it up at all. Too bad. Too bad. Maybe under different circumstances, these two could have made it. She's not fun. She's not adventurous. She's not outgoing. She's none of those things, but she still wants you to say it. She wants you to gas her up. She wants you to tell her things that she's not so that she feels good. But then again, she don't want to do nothing. Let's see going forward here if Gina actually does anything for Clint. Acts of service. Let's see what type of acts of service Gina does for Clint. I want to see it. Come on in, everybody. This is going to be the after party for Married at First Sight, season 16, episode 15 of the after party. And the after party was Shaquille, it was Nicole, and it was Airris. And I guess the biggest thing that came out of the after party, we found out that Kirsten and Shaquille have been lying to us all this time, that they did the wild thing, they did the Humpty Hump, they did the pound, whatever they want to call it. They did that very early on in the marriage, very early on. Y'all really have to watch my video with Kirsten Shaq because I go into it much longer. But we find out they've been lying to this whole time. And why did they lie? I'm pretty sure that the person who wanted to lie the most about it was Kirsten. Kirsten didn't want y'all to know. Kirsten didn't want anyone to know. Kirsten wants to run around and talk about how she's not attracted to Shaq, but behind closed doors, she was going over there doing the wild thing. I told y'all from the beginning it was never about attraction. It was to extract more out of Shaq. Watch my whole video on them. I go into it very deeply, but he basically said they did it quite a while ago, very early on in the marriage, and she liked it because she's continuing to do it. And she's fighting for the marriage. So it has nothing to do with, obviously he must have had the inches she needed. Remember she was talking about I want 7 to 8 inches. Obviously the inches were good enough because she's trying to hang on to the marriage. She's trying to work at it. And all is good. So what did Kirsten do to everyone? She tried to present an outside package, but behind closed doors, it's a completely different thing. I said this about Kirsten from the very beginning. Kirsten likes to paint a picture, but behind closed doors, it's a completely different scenario. The picture she was painting was Shaq needs to do more. Shaq needs to do more. But behind closed doors, completely different picture. Watch my video on them. I go into it a lot. But Shaq also told us that the besties on the show are pretty much Nicole and Kirsten. They talk a lot. I guess that's why Nicole feels so comfortable inserting herself into everyone's business. She was on here too, talking about she just can't help herself. Like I talk about in my video on Nicole and Chris, I understand why people start saying mean things to Nicole because that's the only way you get her up off of you. The way you get Nicole up off of you is to say something mean to her so she can go on over in the corner and cry. Because when you tell her, don't do that, I don't like it, it's not good enough for her. She just keeps coming and coming and coming. And then she comes up with an excuse why she can't stop, how she's got to keep doing it because she knows what you're thinking. She knows how you feel. She wants more from you. She wants you to do well. She wants your marriage to work. And even though you say, I understand you want all that, but I want you to stop, doesn't matter. She keeps going and going and going. So eventually what you do is you have to say something mean to her. You got to say something mean to her to get her up off of you so she'll go away. She creates the abuse in her own life because she doesn't know how to stop. She doesn't know how to stop. She says she's working through her body image issues. I know why people attacked her body image, because when she probably pokes at people, tries to run over people, over inserting herself, they probably do something and call her a bad name or talk about her body or her looks or something. And that's become their defense against her. She doesn't get it. She doesn't understand that the reason why people attack her is because they feel attacked by her. When people tell you don't do something and you keep doing it, they feel attacked. So then they attack you, and probably what they do is they attack her body or they attack her looks. And so now she thinks she's the victim. Not all the time. Sometimes she may be the victim, but a lot of times she's the instigator. She just doesn't look at it as the same. She thinks that their blow is harder than her blow, because what she does, she doesn't even think it's a bad thing. She thinks of, oh, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. No, it's a big deal to a lot of people. It hurts them just as much as talking about your body image hurts you. That's what she needs to get. She needs to get the idea that when you overinsert yourself and cross boundaries with people and they feel hurt by that, it's the same as when someone talks about your body. It could feel the same to that person. So maybe when she gets in touch with the pain she feels over body image issues, maybe she should say, you know what? Maybe this is how people feel when I overinsert myself. She sat up there and caused all that ruckus between Kirsten and Shaq, having people fight because of what stuff she's doing. She causing damage, but she don't care because she wants to say it. So here she is causing more damage in a relationship that's already fragile. But maybe somebody need to come over there and talk about her body or her looks, and maybe she'll get how damaging it is. She need to learn how to stop. She even talked about this scenario about how, she and Chris eventually said, I love you. And she said, well, every day I ask him, do you love me? Do you like me? And every day we basically give each other a rating system. Remember Pastor Cal told her don't do that every day? She didn't listen. She did exactly what the hell she wanted to do. Once again, she doesn't listen. She does whatever. And she admitted that on a lot of days or some days, Chris tells her, I don't really like you today. Chris told her, I don't really like you today. Today I like you. Today I don't like you. I like you a little bit. I don't like you a lot. Who wants to hear that every single day? Nicole does. Like he says, Pastor Cal said, don't ask that question every day. She said, I'm not listening to you, Pastor Cal. I'm going to do the hell what I want to do. And then guess what she gets to hear? She gets to hear from Chris telling her sometimes, I don't like you. But you know what? She kept going and kept going. And so finally he said, you know what? I love you. And she said she had been feeling it because one particular day she had asked him a question and she had told him that she loved him, but he didn't say anything back. But then they were having some more conversation. So she predicted it was coming. But the point of the matter is she kept bullying her way in and bullying her way in. But along that road, she also has to hear, I don't really like you today. I don't like you. So the good comes with the bad. If you don't want to stop Nicole, then you got to take the bad with it. That's why I can see how she has been abused in previous relationships, because that is a way a person would use to get Nicole off of them. It actually be a way when you become so frustrated, when you tell a person stop doing something and they keep doing it, after a while, you strike back. Now I get it. But Shaq also talked about the fact that when he didn't really understand why Kirsten didn't come to the whole football thing. He said he got her points because what he was talking about was that, I did have some plans for Kirsten, but I guess the plans weren't concrete enough or weren't extensive enough. He said it wasn't even just a work event. He said it was a whole celebration. It's that big HBCU Southern, I don't know, not the Southern Classic or Heritage Classic. I don't know. It's a big deal. It's a whole weekend things, football game, all this fun. And so he was like, I had a hotel room. I had flights. What was the big problem? But what Kirsten wanted Kirsten wanted a whole itinerary, what we're doing, where we're going. She wanted it all done for her. Watch my video on Kirsten and Shaq, because they both are two peas in a pod. They both are never satisfied. So what Shaq was basically saying was, I did invite her. I did want her to come. I told her that. But the plans I had for Kirsten and for us to do while we were there, they weren't good enough for Kirsten. There were some plans, but they weren't good enough. And that's the thing that these two have in common. Nothing that they do for each other is good enough. Nothing that Shaq does for Kirsten is good enough. And nothing Kirsten does for Shaq is good enough. Because now that's what's going on this week. Nothing that Kirsten was doing was good enough for Shaq. Two peas in a pod. I'm calling them a Mr. and Mrs. Picky. Be sure to watch my video because that's what they are. Mr. and Mrs. Picky. Nothing that either of them do for each other is good enough. But he lied. He told we've been lying. We consummated this marriage a long time ago. And you could tell they had more than one occasion. This ain't no situation where they did it and it was trash and she didn't like it. Nope, they still doing it. They still doing it. They lied. They covered it up. They painted a picture that wasn't the picture so everybody could see something different. Watch my video on that. I can't even go into it a whole lot more here in the after party video. And then you got Airris over here. I did a long video on them too. Be sure to watch that video as where he's saying, he wants Jasmin to open up more. This after party is taped way after the marriage. And you could see a little bit of growth in Airris in the after party. After he's gone back and talked about some things, he probably ran straight to his therapist. And his therapist has had to set him straight. And what he's realized is that he didn't provide a safe space for Jasmin. And he realizes he didn't. He's realizing that now in the after party, but at the moment he didn't realize that. And now he's able to talk a little bit more intelligently about what some of the real issues were. But you know what? He needs a little bit more in depth about how it all started. That it never really had anything to do with Jasmin's looks. Like I said, I go through it a lot in the video. It's a pretty long video, so be sure to watch it. But he talked about how, he likes a woman that's going to stand up to him and tell him something. And because Jasmin is non-controversial, he wish she would stand up to him more. So he wants to be able to just say mean things. I only clap for you because she told me to. Even when Jasmin did open up and tell her feelings that she was upset about the fact that he was dancing with the instructor, he said, well, I think she blew it out of proportion. Well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to open up and tell you my feelings and then you're going to put me down for my feelings? Which one do you want? Do you want me to keep my mouth shut so I don't get rejected by you? Or do you want me to open up? Because if you want me to open up and tell you how I feel, and I told you I didn't like what you did with the dancing instructor, you can't come back around to me and then tell me I overreacted and my feelings are invalid. Which one do you want? And then he said he acknowledged the fact of what Jasmin said when Jasmin said, there's a whole lot of talk but no action. He says what he's going to do, but in the end, there's no change. He acknowledged the fact and said, you know what? There was a little bit of change, but she's right. It wasn't a lot of it. Bingo. Bingo. Not a whole lot of change. He says, in hindsight, he should have politely declined dancing with that instructor. Even Shaq said, we all saw it when it happened. And he said, the minute we saw him dancing with that instructor, we knew it was going to be a bad idea. They all said he shouldn't do it, but he didn't know. He didn't know. Like I said, he's a robot with no feelings, no emotions, no empathy, no sympathy. So he doesn't think about these things in advance. You have to program it into him to tell him how to think and how he should feel. And then he can go from there. But in that moment, you didn't program that scenario on him. You didn't tell him that in that scenario, you shouldn't do it. You already got a wife that doesn't think you like her. You already tell the woman you're not attracted to her, but now you're dancing with another woman. Do you think that would be a good look, Airris? No, he don't think about it because you didn't pre-program it into him. But now in hindsight, looking at it, now that you programmed me, I can see how it was a bad idea. I should have politely declined the dance. Go figure. He got a lot to learn, or too much to learn, and he can be, and it's too damaging to Jasmin to learn it because she got her own self-esteem issues. She can't take the blows of She can't take the blows of Airris and wait for him to get better because the blows just keep taking her under. They just keep taking her under. Like I've always said, does Jasmin need to learn how to speak up? Yes. Does she need better self-esteem? Yes. Does she need to open up more? Yes. And Jasmin has shown little parts where she tries to open up, but when she does open up, typically what comes behind her open up is the rejection. Just like what she said she's afraid of. She's afraid of opening up because rejection comes. And every time she's opened up her mouth and told her true feelings, Airris came back with a rejection. So you can't keep saying it's a figment of her imagination. It isn't a figment of her imagination. It's the truth. She opened up and said, hey, I don't like the fact that you danced with this woman. I don't like the way it made me feel. Why would you do that? And later on, he came back and told her, you overreacted. He's not a safe space. Like I've been saying, he's not a safe space. The work that Jasmin needs to do, she cannot do it with him. The work that she needs to do, and she needs to do a lot of it, she cannot do it with him. But definitely check out my other video because I also go into how Airris even got here. I don't want to repeat it here in the after party video. I'm going to leave the link behind this video. Please watch it. So that's it, y'all. Talk to you later. Bye.